clock on the dash read 12:47 a.m. when Marcus's rusty Ford van eased to the curb in front of the dark bungalow on Oakwood Lane. Headlights painted the cracked driveway where Evelyn sat motionless behind the wheel of her dead sedan. She didn't look at him. She only whispered through the open window, voice paper-thin, "One more lap around the block, please." Marcus nodded once. No questions. He helped her into the passenger seat of the van. The familiar smell of oil and coffee thick between them. The engine rumbled to life. Tires whispered over asphalt. And somewhere in the quiet dark, a polished cardiologist had no idea the man he just humiliated in front of 200 donors was the only soul her own abandoned mother truly trusted. What secret was hiding under the hood of that dying marriage and that dying heart? Marcus had been a mechanic for 17 years. Most of them spent behind the wheel of the same faded blue van with Riley Mobile Repair, hand-painted on the side in letters that were starting to flake. He was 34, single dad to 7-year-old Lily, and the only steady thing in her world since Vanessa had packed 2 suitcases and flown to a corner office in Seattle 3 years earlier. Every morning he dropped Lily at school. Every evening he cooked boxed mac and cheese while she told him about her day. Nights like this one, when the phone rang after midnight, he still answered. Especially when the caller was Evelyn. Evelyn Voss, 54, retired school librarian, widow of the kindest shop teacher Marcus had ever known. Her husband Frank had taken a skinny 18-year-old Marcus under his wing, taught him to read torque specs instead of giving up on him. When Frank died 6 years back, Marcus kept showing up, unasked, unpaid, just to make sure the porch light stayed on. Vanessa called it pathetic. Evelyn never did. Earlier that same day, the county hospital had thrown its annual fundraiser in the glass atrium on Maple Street. Marcus had shown up in clean coveralls, offering to fix a broken ambulance for free. The vehicle sat useless in the side lot, costing the ER critical minutes. He was halfway under the hood when Dr. Harlan Voss stepped into the sunlight. Crisp Armani suit, €4,200 Swiss watch catching every camera flash, spotless Italian loafers clicking on concrete. Voss's voice carried across the donors like a scalpel. "Stick to your wrenches, pal. Real medicine doesn't run on duct tape." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Marcus straightened slowly, grease on his cheek, face burning. Evelyn stood 30 feet away in a simple navy dress, wine glass trembling in her hand. She looked at the floor, didn't speak. The moment stretched until a coordinator ushered Marcus away like he was the problem. He left without another word, the echo of that laugh following him all the way back to the van. By midnight, the call came. Evelyn's car had died 2 blocks from home. She sounded smaller than he had ever heard her. He didn't tell her about the fundraiser. She didn't mention it either. Now, at 2:14 a.m., the van idled in her driveway. Marcus slid under the sedan with a trouble light clipped to the fender. The alternator was cooked, bearings screaming, diodes dead. He replaced it with the spare he kept in the back of his own van, bolts torqued by feel in the dark. 23 minutes later, the engine turned over smooth and strong. No fanfare. Just the low, healthy purr of something brought back from the edge. Evelyn stood beside the open hood, arms wrapped around herself against the October chill. When he wiped his hands on a rag, she spoke so quietly the words almost disappeared under the idol. "Harlan gave me the diagnosis this afternoon. Severe aortic stenosis. They want to do catheter surgery in 6 weeks. Risky," he said, "but necessary." Marcus stayed quiet. The trouble light swung gently between them, throwing warm orange across her face. She continued, "When they asked for an emergency contact, I gave them your name. Not Harlan's. Not Vanessa's. Yours. The man my daughter threw away 3 years ago." Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus folded the rag once, twice, then set it on the fender. For the first time in years, they looked at each other without the armor of small talk. "I was scared the chair beside me would stay empty," she whispered. more scared of that than the scalpel. Marcus's calloused fingers brushed hers when he closed the hood. Neither of them pulled away. The metal was still warm. Chair doesn't have to stay empty, Evelyn. She gave the smallest nod. Then, as if the words had been waiting since Frank died, she told him about the 31-year-old acceptance letter still folded in her nightstand drawer. The one from the nursing program she gave up when Vanessa was born. The dream she buried so her husband could chase his. The same dream that now felt like it was dying along with her heart. Marcus listened. The dashboard glow lit the inside of the van like a confessional. Lily's forgotten stuffed rabbit, cream-colored with one floppy ear, sat on the bench seat between them, a silent witness. Evelyn touched its worn fur once, then let her hand fall. They drove the long way home that night, looping past the shuttered textile mill and the empty little league field where the lights had been turned off for good. Neither of them mentioned the growing pull between them. They simply let the quiet settle, thick and honest, while the miles ticked by. Marcus was at the kitchen table by 6:30 a.m., pouring cereal for Lily while the coffee maker gurgled. His shoulders still ached from the night before, but the ache felt different now. Purposeful. He had 5 weeks until Evelyn's surgery. 5 weeks to balance soccer practice drop-offs, late-night repair calls, and the growing need to make sure the woman who once believed in him didn't face the scalpel alone. He didn't know yet how deep the debt of that afternoon humiliation would run. He only knew he was going to pay it back, one careful turn of the wrench at a time. Lily's soccer cleats left grass stains on the van floor mats. Marcus wiped them while Evelyn waited in the passenger seat for her first pre-op scan. She wore the same navy dress from the fundraiser. This time her hand didn't tremble when she reached for the seatbelt. He spent $1,780 on pressure-treated lumber and safety railings, then installed a ramp on her porch steps at dusk while she pretended to read inside. He told her it was scrap from another job. She knew better. Neither of them said it out loud. They sat in a 24-hour diner at 1:17 a.m., sharing burnt coffee and silence. Evelyn's spoon clinked against the mug exactly 3 times before she spoke about the empty house, the unread books, the fear that she had waited too long for a second chance at the life she once wanted. Marcus set his own mug down. His grease-stained knuckles rested near hers on the formica. The rabbit sat between them on the table like a small beige referee. 19 hours until the next scan. Marcus balanced Lily on his shoulders at the park, then drove straight to the hospital to sit in the waiting room while Evelyn disappeared behind double doors. He carried 2 paper napkins in his pocket, one from the diner, one from the night her car died. Both had tiny notes she had written when she thought he wasn't looking. The stakes stayed exactly the same. Fix what breaks. Keep the chair from staying empty. And somewhere in the distance, Dr. Harlan Voss still believed the man in the coveralls was nothing more than a grease monkey with no future. He had no idea how wrong he was. The miles kept adding up. The nights kept stretching. And every loop around the dark block brought them a little closer to the moment the whole town would finally see what had been hiding under that hood all along. The fluorescent lights in the auto shop hummed like a dying hive at 6:42 a.m. Marcus slid under a rusted Ford pickup, socket wrench clicking in steady rhythm. His coveralls smelled of old oil and fresh coffee. Across town, Dr. Harlan Voss strode into the hospital boardroom wearing a charcoal Brioni suit cut so sharp it could draw blood, Patek Philippe glinting under the recessed lighting. He slapped a proposal on the mahogany table. We accelerate the auction timeline. 48 hours. The old clinic wing is scrap. No value. Marcus heard the news from a nurse who owed him a favor. His jaw tightened until the muscles ached. He didn't curse. He simply reached into his pocket and felt the small folded letter there. The one Lily had drawn a crayon rabbit on months ago, the same rabbit now propped on the dashboard of his van like a silent witness. Rain hammered the tin roof of the garage at 2:14 a.m. Marcus worked by headlamp, rebuilding the hydraulic lift he'd salvaged from a junkyard outside Tulsa. The part cost him $2,340 he didn't have. But the lift would let him finish 3 more jobs by sunrise. Evelyn texted him at 3:07 a.m. Scan results delayed. They want another panel. Her words sat on his cracked phone screen like stones. He wiped grease from his hands and typed back one line. Chairs still warm. I'm not going anywhere. The rabbit stayed in the glove compartment that night, its faded beige fur picking up the faint scent of diesel. 18 hours until the rescheduled board vote. Marcus stood in Evelyn's kitchen at dawn, installing grab bars along the hallway walls. The metal felt cold against his calloused palms. Lily drew pictures at the table, stick figure rabbits with capes. Evelyn watched him from the doorway, arms folded, voice soft. You keep showing up like this and people are going to talk, Marcus. He didn't look up. Let them. The smell of fresh-cut pine and her lavender shampoo mixed in the narrow space until the air felt almost gentle. Word of the accelerated auction had reached the local paper by noon. Dr. Voss gave a quote on the front page. Sentimentality has no place in medicine. The bidder who sees only rust will learn what progress costs. Marcus read it while waiting for Evelyn's blood work, the newsprint smudging under his thumb. He folded the page once, tucked it beside the rabbit in the van, and drove to the only place that still believed in him. The old airfield hangar sat 10 miles outside town, weeds pushing through cracked concrete. Marcus pulled the heavy door open at 4:19 p.m. inside, under dusty tarps, waited the reason he had come back to this nowhere place. Not a car, not a machine most eyes would recognize. He peeled back the first tarp. Aluminum skin caught the slanting light. The faded stencil on the fuselage still read, Razor 287. His fingers traced the faded letters he'd painted himself 17 years earlier. A quiet voice behind him. You weren't supposed to come back. Old Man Caldwell, the retired air traffic controller who'd once signed off on every one of Marcus's 287 combat missions, stood in the doorway. Caldwell's eyes moved from the folded letter poking from Marcus's pocket to the aircraft that had once flown him through 3 wars and 2 presidential details nobody back home ever knew about. Still got that rabbit, I see. Marcus nodded once. He didn't explain. He simply climbed into the cockpit, ran a systems check that made the old bird whine to life with a sound like distant thunder, and felt the first real reversal since the night Voss had looked at him and said, You're useless here. Take your box of tools and go. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and fear at 11 a.m. Evelyn's latest scan had shown new shadows. The oncologist used words like aggressive and timeline. Marcus sat in the plastic chair outside, Lily on his lap, the rabbit hidden inside his jacket so the girl could stroke its ear when she got scared. He felt the small folded letter crinkle against his chest. Lily's drawing, Evelyn's late-night notes on diner napkins, all of it layered together like armor no one could see. Dr. Voss walked past without a glance, Italian leather shoes clicking on the linoleum, speaking into his phone about projected auction revenue. 1.4 million will fund the new oncology wing. The janitor can keep his socket set. Marcus waited until the shoes disappeared around the corner. Then he made one call. The voice on the other end still carried the crisp intonation of a man who had once trusted Lieutenant Marcus Reed with the lives of 3-star generals. Razor, this is Tower. What do you need? Paperwork, clearance codes, and a favor that stays off every ledger. The reply came without hesitation. Done. 14 hours to the auction. The town square buzzed with early setup. Tents rose like white sails. Auction paddles were printed with the hospital logo. Marcus spent the morning under 3 different vehicles in his shop, earning $4,820 in cash that went straight into an account only he and one retired federal auditor knew existed. Every invoice carried the same discreet stamp. Number 4471. Evelyn found him at 7:30 p.m. on her porch, tightening the last bolt on a custom handrail that gleamed under the porch light. She carried 2 paper napkins from the diner, the ones with her handwriting. I keep thinking if I fold these any tighter they'll disappear. Marcus took one, pressed it flat against the letter in his pocket until both pieces of paper rested together like old friends. The rabbit sat on the swing between them, its button eye reflecting the porch bulb. She spoke so quietly the crickets almost swallowed it. They moved the final vote to tomorrow night, right before the auction. Harlan says the board needs to see momentum. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag that smelled of solvent and rain. Then we give them momentum. 11 hours until the board reconvened. A new mini-crisis arrived in the form of a certified letter slid under the garage door at 5:58 a.m. The bank had frozen his operating account. Someone had flagged his sudden cash deposits as suspicious. The signature on the complaint form belonged to Dr. Harlan Voss's cousin, the regional compliance officer. Marcus stared at the stamp on the letter. Case number 9194. His knuckles whitened around the paper until it crackled like dry leaves. He didn't panic. Instead, he drove to the airfield again. This time, he didn't uncover the aircraft. He uncovered the man who used to fly it. From a locked footlocker, he pulled a single dress uniform, still pressed, still smelling faintly of jet fuel and desert sand. The name tape read Reed. The ribbon rack above the left breast told a story no one in this town had ever been allowed to read. Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 silver stars, 14 air medals. Caldwell watched from the corner, arms crossed. You leaking on purpose now, son? Marcus pinned the wings on with steady fingers. Just enough for the right eyes. He drove back with the uniform in a garment bag, the rabbit riding shotgun like it always did. At the hospital, he found Evelyn in pre-admission, pale under the lights. Lily clutched the stuffed rabbit now, passing it between small hands like a worry stone. Marcus knelt, eye level with his daughter. You hold on to him. He's been through worse than this. The girl nodded, not understanding the weight behind the words. Word filtered through the waiting room by 10 a.m. The board had added a new condition to the auction. Any bidder had to prove immediate capital, $1.78 million wired before midnight, or the entire lot went to the highest corporate offer. Voss's people had already lined up a buyer from Dallas, a private equity firm that specialized in flipping medical real estate for condos. Marcus felt the folded letter in his pocket like a heartbeat. He made 2 more calls. The first to a man in Virginia who still owed him for a night flight in 2009. The second to the original patent office that had once filed the quiet engineering drawings he'd created between tours, drawings that controlled 3 of the most lucrative medical imaging patents still in use today. Each conversation ended the same way. Stand by, Razor. We're moving the pieces. 7 hours until the board vote. The town square smelled of popcorn and anticipation. Auction paddles lined the folding tables. Dr. Voss rehearsed his remarks in a back tent, adjusting the Patek on his wrist every 90 seconds. Marcus worked in the open now, sleeves rolled up, installing a portable generator for the event's sound system because the hospital's own unit had mysteriously failed an hour earlier. No one questioned why the quiet mechanic knew exactly how to rewire a 480-volt panel in under 9 minutes. Evelyn arrived in a wheelchair this time, oxygen tubing discreet under her navy dress. Lily pushed the chair with both hands. The rabbit balanced on her mother's lap like a co-pilot. They stopped 10 feet from where Marcus knelt in the dirt. Evelyn's voice carried just far enough. You don't have to keep doing this. Marcus looked up, grease on one cheek, eyes steady. I'm not doing it for thanks. I'm doing it so that chair at your table never stays empty. The rabbit's ear flopped forward as if agreeing. A fresh crisis landed at 4:47 p.m. The corporate bidder from Dallas wired their deposit early, $2.3 million, triggering an automatic escalation clause. Unless someone matched and exceeded by midnight, the clinic, the land, and every piece of equipment would be torn down by month's end. Dr. Voss stepped onto the small stage to applause, smiling like a man who had already won. His voice rang across the square through the speakers Marcus had just repaired. Some things are simply beyond salvage. Progress demands we let them go. Marcus stood slowly, wiping his hands. In his pocket, the folded letter had grown thick with new napkin notes. Evelyn's handwriting from the night before, tiny words that read, "Thank you for the ramp," and "I'm scared, but I'm still here." He felt every mile, every late-night scan, every socket turn since the day Voss had dismissed him in front of the entire maintenance staff. But the debt was still being collected, one careful piece at a time. The sun dropped lower, the crowd thickened, and somewhere beneath the surface of this sleepy town, the man in coveralls was no longer the only one who knew what had been hiding under all that rust. The next morning broke gray and cold over the auction grounds. Marcus was already under the main bidding tent at 5:12 a.m., torque wrench in hand, replacing every corroded bolt on the stage scaffolding that Voss's crew had rushed the week before. The metal smelled of fresh-cut rust and morning dew. He worked without music, without help. By the time the first volunteers arrived at 6:30, the entire platform sat rock solid. No one commented on how a simple mechanic knew military-grade load calculations. They simply stepped up and tested it with their own weight, nodding once. Evelyn rolled in at 7:40, Lily beside her carrying 2 thermoses, and the rabbit tucked under one arm like a quiet promise. The stuffed animal's left ear had a new stitch from the night before. Evelyn's shaky hands and a sewing kit at 2:14 a.m. Marcus wiped his palms on his coveralls and met them halfway. "You slept?" he asked. "Some," she said. Her voice was thinner today. "The new oxygen concentrator you dropped off at midnight helps." He didn't answer, just reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded letter. It was thicker now, napkins and torn receipt backs layered inside like armor. He added today's note, his own block printing this time, then slid it back. The rabbit watched from Lily's arms, one button eye catching the rising sun. That was when the second escalation hit. At 8:19 a.m., a black Escalade rolled up. 2 men in Brioni suits stepped out, clipboards in hand. They were from the Dallas Bidders due diligence team, arrived a full day early. Within minutes, they were circling the property with laser measures and tablets, marking every building for demolition. Their lead attorney, a woman whose patent leather heels clicked like a countdown, announced to the small crowd already gathering that the $2.3 million wire had cleared. The automatic escalation clause was now live. To stop the sale, someone had to post a certified cashier's check for $2.8 million by 11:59 p.m. tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Voss appeared on the newly steady stage at 9:05, Patek flashing under the tent lights. He adjusted his cuff links twice before speaking. "Gentlemen, this isn't personal. It's arithmetic. The math says this land is worth more as a distribution hub than it will ever be as a charity clinic." His eyes found Marcus at the back of the crowd. "Some machines simply reach end of life. Best to let them go quietly." The words landed exactly where they had landed once before. In front of the entire maintenance staff, in front of Evelyn's empty chair, in front of a little girl clutching a stuffed rabbit. Marcus felt the old heat rise in his chest, but he only nodded once, turned, and walked back to the portable generator that had kept the lights on all night. 10 hours until cutoff. Marcus spent the next 90 minutes in the records room nobody had used in 3 years, pulling faded blueprints no one remembered existed. The paper smelled of mildew and old coffee. At 10:47, he found the original 1994 deed rider, buried under a stack of yellowed invoices that granted the clinic perpetual first refusal rights on any corporate sale. The clause had been written by the hospital's founding engineer, the same man who signed every schematic with the call sign Rusty 1. He folded the rider carefully and added it to the letter in his pocket. The bundle was starting to feel heavy, like it carried more than paper now. A new mini-crisis dropped at 1:22 p.m. The county clerk's office called. The original deed rider required a physical notarized countersignature from a living officer of the founding board. The last surviving board member, Evelyn's grandfather, had died in 2018. Voss's lawyers were already moving to invalidate the clause on those grounds. Their motion sat on the judge's desk in Austin, timestamped 1:19 p.m. Marcus stood in the parking lot, phone to his ear, listening to the clerk's tired voice. In the background, he could hear Lily singing softly to her mother on the porch swing. The rabbit sat between them, ears flopping in the breeze. He ended the call without a word, walked to his truck, and pulled a small metal case from under the driver's seat. Inside lay a single dog tag on a faded chain. The name stamped on it read Rusty 1. He closed the case again. By 3:50 p.m., the bidding tent had filled with more than 200 people. Nurses, former patients, local mechanics who had once laughed when Voss called Marcus scrap. They came to watch the end, or maybe to watch something else. Voss paced the stage, shoes immaculate, checking his Patek every 90 seconds like a man counting down to victory. Marcus stayed in the open now, sleeves rolled higher. He spent 43 minutes rewiring the entire PA system so the microphone on stage would cut out every time Voss tried to speak above a certain volume. The feedback squealed at exactly the right moments. Each time it happened, the crowd shifted, uneasy. Voss's polished smile began to crack. At 5:33 p.m., Evelyn's oxygen tank ran dry in the middle of the crowd. The spare tank Marcus had prepositioned behind the stage was missing. Someone had moved it. Lily's small voice cut through the murmurs. Mom can't breathe right. Marcus didn't run. He walked. In 38 seconds, he had the generator's auxiliary compressor feeding a makeshift regulator he'd machined the night before. The hiss of fresh oxygen filled the air like a second heartbeat. Evelyn took a long pull, eyes closed, then looked up at him. You keep showing up, she whispered. I keep my word, he answered. He slipped another napkin note into the letter, her handwriting again, from last night. The rabbit says your family now. The bundle in his pocket was starting to look like a small book. The sun began its slow drop behind the ridgeline. The Dallas team returned at 6:12, now with 3 more attorneys and a mobile notary. They set up a folding table directly in front of the stage like they were already measuring for the wrecking ball. Their lead attorney clicked her heels once and announced that any counterbid must be accompanied by proof of funds. Liquid verified, in the room, by 11:59 p.m. No wires, no promises. Physical. Voss stepped to the microphone again. The freshly rewired system gave him exactly 4 seconds of clear speech before the feedback screamed. He flinched. The crowd didn't laugh. They waited. Marcus stood 20 feet away, arms crossed, grease still on one cheek. In his pocket, the letter had grown another layer. Today's note from Lily, written in purple crayon. Mr. Marcus fixed the ramp so Mommy can watch the stars with me. A fresh crisis landed at 8:47 p.m. The bank president, Voss's golfing partner, arrived with a single sheet of paper. The clinic's emergency line of credit had been called due at close of business. The balance, $417,000. Payable immediately or the entire asset package defaulted into Voss's control. The president laid the demand letter on the bidding table like a death warrant. Cameras from the local news crew caught every angle. Phones rose in the crowd. Everyone watched. Marcus felt the familiar weight in his chest. The same weight he had carried the day Voss had pointed at him in front of 30 maintenance workers and said, "You're just a wrench turner. The future doesn't need you anymore. Take your box and go." He looked at Evelyn, looked at Lily, looked at the rabbit whose stitched ear now carried 3 different threads. His, hers, the little girl's. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his coveralls and pulled out a second folded document. This one was older. The edges were soft from years of handling. It was the original incorporation paperwork for the clinic, signed in 1994 by a man who had used a different name back then. A name the world had almost forgotten. He did not show it to anyone yet. He simply added it to the growing letter, pressing the bundle flat against his heart. The tent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of damp canvas and strong coffee drifted on the night air. Voss adjusted his Patek for the 14th time that hour. His smile had thinned to a polite line. Marcus rolled his sleeves down once, then back up. The debt was still being collected, one careful piece at a time. The man who had once been dismissed in front of them all was no longer hiding everything he was. And the rabbit watched from Evelyn's lap, its single good button eye reflecting the lights like it knew the next page of the letter was about to change everything. The canvas flap slapped hard against the tent pole at 9:03 p.m. A courier in a mud-splattered vest pushed through the crowd carrying a slim black briefcase. He set it on the bidding table with a dull metallic click that cut through every conversation. The local news camera swung toward it like a spotlight. Marcus kept his face still. Evelyn's hand tightened on his forearm. Lily hugged the rabbit closer, the worn plush body pressed against her small chest, its stitched ear brushing her chin. "Mr. Reed," the courier said, voice flat and official. "This is a priority notice from the County Health Board. Effective immediately." He snapped the latches. Inside lay a single yellow envelope stamped with today's date. The letter inside declared the clinic's operating license under emergency review. A technicality buried in the original charter from 1994 required the majority owner to hold an active medical directorship credential. Marcus had let that credential lapse the year he chose to disappear. The board now gave him exactly 48 hours to produce proof of current licensure, or the entire facility would be shuttered pending full re-audit. Voss's polished Oxfords scraped the plywood floor. He stepped forward, Brioni jacket catching the overhead bulbs, the thin gold chain of his Patek flashing once. "Well," he said, loud enough for the microphones. "Looks like the wrench turner forgot one small detail. Again." A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the 30 or so remaining spectators. Phones lifted higher. The smell of cooling coffee and wet grass thickened in the warm air. Marcus said nothing. He simply reached once more into the inner pocket of his coveralls. His fingers found the growing bundle of paper there, the same packet that now carried the original incorporation documents, the maintenance log from 2009, and the faded transfer of title showing the clinic's true first investor. He added the yellow envelope without opening it, pressing the stack flat against his chest like a shield. Then he looked straight at the courier. "Tell the board the original signer will appear in person. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. The courier blinked, uncertain. Voss's smile faltered for half a second before he recovered it. Wider now, brittle. "You're stalling, Marcus. Everyone can see it." Marcus didn't answer. He simply folded the flap of his coveralls closed again. The rabbit's single button eye caught the light from above, staring out from Lily's arms as if it, too, remembered the day the papers were first signed in a different name. Day 38 began at 4:12 a.m. with the low grind of a diesel generator kicking on behind the clinic's east wing. Marcus walked the empty corridors alone, boots echoing on the same linoleum he had mopped for 8 quiet years. The bundle of documents rode against his heart like a second pulse. He stopped at the old boiler room door, the one marked "Authorized Personnel Only," and pressed his palm to the cool metal. The smell of machine oil and concrete dust rose up like an old friend. He had built this place once, not as Marcus the mechanic, as someone else. Someone whose name appeared on patents that still kept half the imaging equipment in the building running. But that truth had stayed folded away for 17 years, just like the rabbit's ear had stayed patched with whatever thread was closest. At 6:57 a.m., the first fresh crisis of the new day arrived in the form of 3 state inspectors pulling up in a silver SUV. They carried clipboards and skepticism. The head inspector, a woman with a tight bun and sharper voice, announced they were there to verify compliance with the 1994 charter clause. If the medical director could not be produced by 9, the auction would accelerate by 48 hours. Voss had already made the call. Marcus stood in the lobby, coveralls still streaked with yesterday's grease, and watched them fan out. Evelyn tried to keep Lily occupied in the small play corner, reading the same picture book for the 3rd time. The rabbit lay on the plastic chair between them, its stitched ear now carrying one more tiny knot. Marcus had added a fourth thread at 5 a.m. while the little girl slept, a thin strand of red from the old maintenance flag he once flew on every repaired ambulance. The inspectors moved like locusts. They found the outdated fire suppression tags. They noted the single cracked window in radiology. Each flaw was photographed, logged, and added to a growing ledger that would justify immediate seizure if the director did not appear. By 8:40 a.m., the tension in the hallway felt thick enough to taste. Voss leaned against the reception desk in his charcoal suit, arms crossed, the Patek catching every fluorescent flicker. He did not speak, but the message was clear in the way he kept checking his watch. 20 minutes until cutoff. Again. Marcus stepped into the small records room at 8:44. The bundle against his chest had grown heavier. He pulled out the top document now, the original medical license issued in 1993 under the name Dr. Marcus Reed. The photo was younger, the hair darker, but the eyes were the same steady gray. He stared at it for 3 full seconds, then slid it back inside the packet without showing a soul. Instead, he walked to the supply closet, retrieved a battered metal toolbox no one had touched in years, and carried it to the lobby. He set it on the counter with a heavy clank. The inspectors turned. Voss straightened. Marcus opened the box. Inside lay not wrenches, but a single crisp folder sealed with red wax. On its cover, stamped in faded black ink, were the words, Medical Director Transfer, Original, 1994. He did not open it. He simply placed it beside the toolbox and spoke for the first time that morning. 9 o'clock. The head inspector checked her watch. 8:59 a.m. She reached for the folder. Marcus's hand covered it first, gentle but final. Not yet, he said quietly. The man who signed it wants to hand it over himself. Voss let out a short, sharp laugh that echoed off the tile. Still playing games? Wrench turner? Marcus met his eyes. The bundle of papers pressed warm against his sternum. The rabbit's ear threads still visible in his memory. The weight of every quiet year suddenly lined up behind him like silent wings. The inspector cleared her throat. Sir, if the director is not present in 60 seconds, we have no choice but to. A soft chime sounded from the far corridor. The service elevator door slid open. Marcus turned toward it, the first real crack of a smile touching the corner of his mouth. The smell of fresh solder drifted down the hallway from the elevator. Someone had been working through the night again. The inspectors shifted their weight. Voss's polished shoes squeaked once as he adjusted his stance. And in the play corner, Lily lifted the rabbit to her shoulder so it could see too. Its button eye reflecting the morning light like it understood the next page of the letter was finally about to be read aloud. The elevator doors parted with a soft hydraulic sigh. A tall figure stepped out, shoulders squared inside a faded green scrub top, sleeves rolled to the elbows. The smell of solder sharpened, metallic and clean. Dr. Marcus Reed walked straight into the lobby carrying a small circuit board still warm from the bench. His boots left faint prints of machine oil on the polished tile. Marcus gave the slightest nod. Reed answered with one of his own, then laid the board beside the wax-sealed folder like it belonged there. Board is live. Telemetry reads green across all 4 wings. Voss's laugh died in his throat. The head inspector's pen froze above her clipboard. Reed looked at Marcus, not at them. You told me to keep the old backbone alive. I did. Every night for 38 days. The pediatric ventilators are talking to the mainframe again. The neonatal monitors no longer flatline when the grid flickers. Took replacing 1 resistor at a time. Same way you taught me in '94, before you walked out of the OR and never walked back in. He reached into his breast pocket and produced a single sheet. The paper was yellowed but crisp. He laid it on top of the folder. Marcus's name was at the bottom, signed in the same steady hand that had once closed 100 tiny chests. The inspector's eyes widened. This predates the entire merger file. Voss took one involuntary step forward, Italian loafers squeaking again. That signature is a forgery. The man who signed those documents disappeared after the malpractice suit. Everyone knows that. Marcus said nothing. He simply lifted the rabbit-eared bundle from inside his coveralls and placed it on the counter beside the growing pile. The worn threads caught the overhead light. Lily, still in the play corner, clutched her own stuffed rabbit tighter, as if the two cloth creatures were exchanging silent signals across the room. We open the East Wing's original surgical theater at noon. Anyone who wants to watch history get dusted off is welcome. He turned and walked back toward the service elevator. Reed fell in beside him. The inspectors stayed rooted, the folder still untouched. The next morning, the lobby smelled of strong coffee and fresh printer ink. Marcus arrived at 6:17 a.m. carrying 2 thermoses. He set one beside the ever-growing stack on the counter, now 4 folders deep. Day 39 was written in black marker on a piece of surgical tape stuck to the top folder. A junior hospital attorney in a crisp navy suit arrived at 7:05, eyes red from lack of sleep. She had been sent by Voss to contain the narrative. Instead, she found a line of former night shift nurses already waiting, each holding a faded pay stub from 1994 with Marcus's signature authorizing overtime during the original pediatric expansion. By 8:42, the attorney was on her 3rd cup of the coffee Marcus had brewed. She kept glancing at the rabbit-eared bundle as though it might bite her. At 9 o'clock exactly, the head inspector returned with 2 more colleagues and a portable scanner. Voss trailed them, shirt collar already damp. He had replaced the Brioni suit with a more modest gray jacket, but the Patek still flashed on his wrist every time he checked the time. Marcus waited until the scanner was powered on. Then he laid a 5th document on the counter. This one carried the seal of the State Medical Board. The date, October 17th, 1994. The title, Irrevocable Transfer of Founding Directorship, Conditional upon Hospital Solvency. The inspector scanned it. The machine chirped. The screen lit up green. Voss's voice cracked. That condition was never met. The hospital went bankrupt in 97. Marcus looked at him for the first time that morning. It would have, if the anonymous wire transfers hadn't started arriving every quarter for the next 12 years. Each one exactly enough to keep the pediatric wing breathing. He reached into the metal toolbox again and brought out a small ledger. The cover was cracked leather. Inside, column after column of deposits. Every entry initialed MR in the same handwriting now stacked on the counter. The attorney whispered, That's $23 million over 12 years. Lily had wandered closer, rabbit dangling from one hand. She stopped beside her father and looked up at Voss with the same steady gray eyes the old documents kept revealing. We test the original or air handlers at 1,300 hours. They haven't moved air in 29 years. If they start, the entire original wing becomes eligible for historic preservation status. That status voids any forced sale. Voss's face had gone the color of old plaster. He looked at the rabbit on the counter, then at the one in Lily's arms, then back at Marcus. For the first time, the polished man seemed to be calculating something other than leverage. That night, the corridors echoed with the low hum of restored machinery. Marcus and Reed worked shoulder to shoulder under the harsh work lights of the old theater. The air smelled of ozone and machine grease. At 2:14 a.m., the first air handler kicked on with a sound like a long-held breath finally released. Dust drifted down in lazy spirals through the beams. Marcus wiped his hands on a shop rag and pulled the rabbit-eared bundle from his pocket once more. He unfolded the top letter, the one he had never shown anyone. The handwriting was smaller, written by a much younger man. I leave this place tonight so no one can say I profited from a child's death on my table. But the hospital stays mine on paper. When the last creditor comes, show them the chain. Show them the rabbit. They'll know what it means. He refolded it carefully and slid it back against his chest. At 6 a.m. on what the counter now read as day 41, the lobby was no longer empty. 27 staff members stood in quiet clusters. Some held coffee. Some held old ID badges. All of them watched the counter where the stack had grown to 11 documents. A single red wax seal still remained unbroken. Voss arrived at 7:30 wearing the same gray jacket, but the Patek was gone. In its place was a cheap Timex. He carried no briefcase. He simply walked to the counter, looked at the growing evidence of a life deliberately hidden, and for the first time did not speak. Marcus arrived 2 minutes later. He set a 12th folder down. This one had no seal. It was simply labeled, Final Condition, 2025. He did not open it. He only said, 19 hours until the auction. The theater is ready for visitors. The machines are breathing on their own. The original charter is alive again. And this building still belongs to the man who signed the first line in 1994. He looked directly at Voss. The man who signed it is standing in front of you. The head inspector's hand hovered over the final folder. This time Marcus did not stop her. She broke the last wax seal. The paper inside carried only 3 lines. The hospital returns to Marcus Reed upon proof of restored original systems. Proof delivered. Welcome back, doctor. A soft collective inhale moved through the room. Lily stepped forward and placed her own stuffed rabbit on the counter beside the worn bundle. The 2 cloth ears touched. One faded, one new, as if sealing an agreement older than either of them. Voss stared at the signature. His shoulders dropped half an inch. The Timex on his wrist caught the light as he checked it one last time. Marcus turned toward the elevators again, but this time he paused. He looked back at the growing crowd, at the stack of proof, at the 2 rabbits touching on the counter. The smell of fresh solder still lingered in the air like a promise kept. He had not yet told them about the 13th document, the one that listed every board member who had voted to sell the hospital to the highest bidder. The one that showed Voss's own signature from 3 years earlier, approving the very auction scheduled for tomorrow. That revelation would wait until the room was full. When the countdown reaches 0, the entire town will finally see what had been hiding under that hood all along.